Hello everyone, it's Karen. Here's the situation. I started my summer in the UK, was home for a week, and then started online dating and have been insanely busy and need an introvert day. So today I'm gonna rest my mind, rest my body, enjoy an introvert day, and basically this is what's gonna happen. First, I'm gonna go to the farmer's market. You can come with me. Then I'm gonna go to the art museum because they have a new collection of artwork that I really want to see. But the reason I said that I'm resting my mind and body today is because there's a book I want to review as well. So this book, To Rest Our Minds and Bodies, is a book that I read. I started it in London and finally finished it when I was in Norwich with Sarah. This is my second time reading through it, and I just want to use this introvert day as a day to vlog, and then at the end of the vlog to review this book that I am now reading for the second time because I deeply connected to it so much, and I just thought that this seemed like an appropriate vlog in which to talk about it. So follow along, and I hope you enjoy this. Hello everyone, it is the next day after I said that I was going to talk to you about this book. I have rested my mind, I have rested my body, and I'm ready to talk to you about To Rest Our Minds and Bodies by Harriet Armstrong. I want to first start by telling you how I heard about it, and I do have my notes and some tea. So settle in because this might be a long one. Every year I start my summer in the UK, and this summer I decided that I was going to spend some time in London, which is only because I wanted to go to the Freud Museum. However, I was going to be there for a few days, and in addition to the Freud Museum, I wanted to do other literary sorts of things. And so I decided, if I was living in London, what would I do? And obviously, I would go to literary events. So I ended up just looking on different websites and finding that Foyles, which I had heard of before but never been to, had absolute loads of literary events. And I ended up booking one every single night that I was in London. The first one that I went to was for this book. And the reason that I selected that one is, first of all, I was in London, so why not? But also, look at this cover. Like, I just felt and still feel that the cover of a book says a lot about it, and that this cover really gives like thinky woman energy, which is a term that Rebecca from Rebecca Eats Books used to say. Basically, looking at the cover, you can tell this is probably going to be in very interior novel, very reflective, very insightful, and that's exactly what it was. So I had the absolute best time meeting the author. I felt connected to her from like the moment she started. She came out and walked on stage. She was lovely to briefly chat with in the signing line, and we have continued our chats on Instagram, which has been really lovely, both to discuss the book and just other things in life as well. She's absolutely amazing. So with that being said, let's go on and talk about the plot of the book. This book is about a third-year uni student. It is her last year at uni, and she is really studying everything. She is interested in so many things that she doesn't really have like one specific area of study. However, I would say that anthropology and psychology are definitely towards the top of what she is mostly studying. One of the things that she is studying or doing a little research project with is watching these videos of babies who are kind of having like tummy time and watching them interact with objects that are around them, and just monitoring like when they reach out for an object and make contact with the object, and the number of objects that they touch, and if possibly that could be correlated with their vocabulary and their speaking as they get older. And the hypothesis is kind of that the more physical connection an infant has with the world around them, as shown by reaching out for objects, the more that they are going to engage verbally with the world. And I feel that that one example of the psychological study that's going on throughout the book really just shows what the rest of the book is about. And it's really about her in her last year, an unnamed narrator, in her last year at uni. But it's really more about both her body and mind and her connection to the world around her. So how her body physically interacts with the world around her, both through interacting with people, locations, all sorts of stuff like that. And then also how her mind interacts with all these things, and basically the connections between people, between objects, just like how everybody is connected and interconnected in so many different ways. That is kind of the plot of the book, but like I said, this is a thinky woman book, so a lot of it is very interior. I would say, just talking a bit more about the plot, that this book has been compared to Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. And I can see that based on kind of the interior thoughts, reflections, self-discovery, figuring out who you are as a person, and kind of the age that our main character or narrator is at the time of the book. However, I recently read All Fours by Miranda July, hated it with a fiery passion initially, and came to love it through our discussion at book club. And the more I realized that I loved All Fours, not for the plot, but for the layers beneath, really made me think of this one, because the plot is great. I have no concerns about the plot, but this one I also loved for the layers beneath the surface. And I feel like these books almost could be in conversation with each other. So yes, The Bell Jar, but if I were to describe it, I would say it's like a young Miranda July, like a 20-something, much more gentle, but still with those deep, fierce interior thoughts. So yeah, that's how I would describe it, I guess. is a young Miranda July, and the more I thought about that, and when I reread it, actually Miranda July is mentioned in here. So it makes sense that I felt that these books are in conversation with each other. Whether that was intentional or not, as an influence, I definitely can see the connections between them. So as I said, the plot was great, but it was really the deeper layers that allowed me to enjoy this book so immensely. And themes obviously are a deeper layer. So some of the themes that I will mention is just basically the physical interaction of a body with the world. One thing I didn't mention about the plot is that this is a lot about the main character, our narrator, discovering sex and herself as a sexual being and what that means, and what her identity is. So literally her physical interaction with the world is something that is a massive, massive theme in this book. In addition, there's the interaction between the world and her mind, and her interconnection with others and their minds and their thoughts. And then, kind of as I mentioned before, just this idea of exploring identity and exploring yourself as a sexual being are definitely a few more themes. But even with that being said, even the themes are not what I loved about this book. Genius themes. I could go on with some more. What I loved about this book, I think could be a bit surprising, and that is that I felt it was the most autistically soaked book I have ever read. Let me tell you a bit more about that. So in December, at age 38, I was diagnosed with autism. And while this book is not autistic and does not mention autism, I felt so seen by it. I felt so similar with the unnamed narrator of our story. And I just felt that even though neurodivergence is discussed, the main character has dyspraxia. Even though that was discussed, I think it is that basically, I don't know if you have noticed this before, if you yourself are neurodivergent, but it's like we are drawn together. So absolute loads of my friends are neurodivergent in some way. Either they're questioning if they could be autistic or they have ADHD. I don't know anyone that's dyspraxic, but I think that there is something that sees likeness and is drawn to it. And so even though the unnamed narrator is not autistic, I saw the dyspraxia in her, and I think I was drawn to that narration and felt connected to the main character, even though we have different conditions or different brains, I guess I would say. I have a list of all the reasons, or not all the reasons, but loads of reasons where I found autism in this book. And again, it's not directly autism, because as I said, the narrator is not autistic, but just, I guess, things I connected to and how it showed up for me. So I would like to go through some of those, not all of them, but I'll start by reading something from page 2 that made me feel incredibly seen. That holiday, I was obsessed with the idea that I should be reading books as rapidly as possible, somehow gathering all of human experience and great human thought inside of me and storing it away for some time in the future when it would be necessary. It was depressing sitting there trying to read all these classic books as rapidly as possible, trying to read maybe one classic book a day, reading in the car and getting car sick, and having to stare out the window at the sea and the black tarmac of the road as it skidded by beneath me. That endlessly disappearing tarmac and the endlessly present pale sea, and my book held tightly in both hands. It's very depressing. I feel connected to that, not only because I'm constantly setting expectations for myself book-wise, but also because I don't only read for pleasure. I read to find something deeper, to find connection with other people, whether that's authors or the narrators of stories, or the people that I discuss books with. I read for deeper reasons, and I felt like this part of the book kind of discussed that in some way. Another thing, and let me pause for a second, because I think that sometimes, I think the world is getting better at understanding what it means to be autistic, but I think that there's loads of ways that autism shows up that may be different than the perception of the world. And one of the ways that autism shows up for me is being very systematic about things that I am researching or interested in. And so there's a part on page 3 when also there was basically our narrator just being very systematic about how she approached self-discovery and how important it was to her. So it says, I was really feeling at the time some need to contextualize myself inside the world, to position myself as a piece of something bigger, something very fundamental. I was creating a kind of self-educational PowerPoint, as one does, about different foundational concepts. Marxism, Impressionism. I was planning to cover every concept, and I felt that when I finished, I would somehow be part of things. Somehow held very tightly by the world and surrounded by things I understood and could master or relate to. I really wanted to make sense in relation to the things that were around me. That was important to me. So that's another example of something that is not directly autistic. It's not mentioned, obviously, because as I said, our narrator is dyspraxic, but I connected to it. There also is, just to go off of my notes, I'm not going to read that many quotes, but there's a discussion on scripting and how sometimes people that are autistic script conversations before they have them, kind of run through the conversation in their mind. There is this craving that the main character has for demand-free time, and a discussion on how she loves just being able to exist and go from library to library to library at her university, just studying and reading and growing without any real demands, because there are demands that she's putting on herself. And I also deeply, deeply connect to that. There's times when there's not necessarily a search for a routine, but admiring somebody that the main character is friends with who has an amazing routine. There's loads of curiosity about the lives of others. For example, she loves riding the train at night because then the lights are on inside people's homes or apartments, and you can see into them and just kind of wonder about what their lives are like. And I think that is something that also, you know, as I said, is not labeled autistic, but is this very autistic idea of just wondering about humanity and being interested in humanity and being interested in psychology as a passion, as a special interest. I prefer passion, but as a passion, just being intensely curious about other people and what their lives are like and how they interact with the world. There is also a quote, which I'm not going to read the whole thing off because I think that it's too late in the book and kind of involves some spoilers, I would say. But at one point, our narrator is quite upset, and she talks about how it was hard to speak and use her face. And I cannot think of something I connect to more. I mean, really, I connect to all of this, like I said, but being conscious of your face, your body, how you're supposed to be, how you're acting, if you're acting in the right way for how other people should act or are acting, that is something that I connect with as well. And then there was something about the physical world almost being a mask, and also this deep desire to feel. So like I said, so much of the book I connect with because of all these bits and bobs that I think are me connecting to a narrator that is neurodivergent in a way that's different from me, but that is shared, that neurodivergent experience. However, with that being said, it's so much more than that. It's not these individual experiences that I have tabbed and that I have shared with you that allow me to see myself or see neurodivergence. It's not just that. It's literally the entire way this book is written. This book is a thinky woman book, as I said. And with that being said, it's really a lot of these small situations that come together and create a bigger story. It's something that is sometimes true with people that are autistic, is they have parts to whole thinking. So all these parts of a situation are analyzed separately, and then together you zoom out and see the big picture. Whereas some people that are not autistic might look at the big picture and then look at the details. So as I said, I connected to the narrator, but even the way this book was set up really matched my way of thinking. This parts to whole, where you're analyzing our narrator and the parts and the stories that she's telling, and eventually at the end you see this whole beautiful mosaic that has come out. And then finally, I think I already mentioned, but the author is absolutely amazing. I have had so many amazing conversations with her. She is so kind. She's so lovely. She's so insightful. And yeah, I think that adds a whole nother layer to the story. So I can love this book for the plot. I can appreciate it more because of the themes, and even more because of how much I felt seen by this book. But I think that having an amazing interaction or interactions with the author also adds to why I loved this book so much, and why I've read it twice. So that being said, I am curious if you would appreciate reading this. I think you would like it if you're into thinky woman books, if you find that you are neurodivergent yourself, or if anything that I've said sounds interesting to you, if the bell jar is your jam, if all fours is your jam. Yeah, I definitely think that this is worth a read. And yeah, let me know what you're reading. Like, how has your summer been? Are you in a slump? Are you reading amazing things? Let me know. Talk to you guys soon.